John is now committed to this new relationship with Ygritte. His life depends on it. So basically, this is the deal: sleep with Ygritte on a regular basis, and you will live. As I said, call me crazy, but it's the kind of deal I would personally accept. Even though, confession time, I'm not exactly comfortable with with heights. So the part of the deal, in small print, that is scaling a 700-foot ice wall, wouldn't sit terribly well with me. But the odds of surviving that are certainly higher than what would await John if Mance Raider decided to tell the Lord of Bones, "All right, mate, the bastard of Winterfell is all yours. Do your worst." Rattleshirt's worst, boiling down to, boiling your bones once he's done with you, and wearing them as a trendy accessory on his outfit. Which, now that I think about it, would make the perfect Halloween costume. Has anyone ever thought of that? Turning up at a Halloween party dressed as Rattleshirt? All right, just an idea. Oh, and let me reiterate, once the scaling is done, ideally undetected by the brothers of the Night's Watch, there's one final loyalty test John is expected to pass. Engage in battle with the above-mentioned Night's Watch brothers. So yeah, damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. Tell you what, to keep going back on the same point, I would just live one day at a time. And in the meantime, have a few tumbles with the ginger girl under the blanket. Well, under the skins, really. A sheepskin cloak. And there's many a night I would dance beneath it with Ygritte, to use her own words, There, I said it. Besides, that's exactly what John has been doing, so bravo. Now, the laws of cliches determine the demand that I give John a slow clap. Yeah. But where are my manners? I didn't even welcome you. Welcome, dear listener, to my rambling commentary of Jon III from A Storm of Swords. And if that intro I just went through confused the hell out of you and made you feel like you need a bit of a recap, feel free to navigate to the previous Jon POV chapter, which is chapter 15 in the novel, I believe. As for this very chapter, as I said, Jon III, or Jon III in Roman numerals, or indeed Jon III, which, to continue our exploration of papal history, happens to be the name of not one, but two popes in history. One in Rome between 561 and 574 Anno Domini, and one in Alexandria, Egypt, as you will remember that the Orthodox Coptic Christians also have their own pope, and this one was pope between 680 and 689 AD. There. Don't you feel better now that you have that information? But let's get back to our John, because the chapter opens on a clear and moonless night, moonless sky at night, and John's excuse for exiting the tent is that he has to go and look for his direwolf ghost. So he's out, taking a walk alone with his thoughts, And this is where George R.R. Martin seizes the opportunity to consolidate a bit of knowledge of constellations in the reader. Because you will remember that we heard some of the names of constellations in the last Bran chapter we explored in this novel. The Crone's Lamp, the Galley, the Ice Dragon. And Bran recalls those names because they were taught to him by Osha to instruct him on figuring out which way to go. But in John's case, as he looks up to the stars, he recalls the names of those constellations as Maester Lewin taught them to him. So that's interesting, Osha, Lewin. Does that mean that Maester Lewin's curriculum, syllabus, whatever, doesn't cover astronomy until what, like 9th or 10th grade, year 9 or possibly year 10. That being the reason why Bran didn't learn stars nomenclature from Lewin. In fact, when we did see Maester Lewin examining the stars, he was indeed in Bran's room, but he was busy observing the comet. Didn't name any. He didn't name any specific star. I mean, it's not like he went, "Oh, look, it's right there. The comet is right there between the galley and the ice dragon. Want to see? Yeah, check it out. Here, take my Mirish eye, which is what we call a telescope." In fact, Bran would occasionally say stuff to him, and Lewin would just go, yeah, man, yeah. All the while observing the comet. It's too busy observing the comet to actually listen to Bran. There, it's all there. It's all there in Bran 7 from Book 1, A Game of Thrones. And here, Jon gives us a few more names for, world building's sake. The 7 Wanderers, sacred to the faith, the Shadow Cat, the Moon Maid, and the Sword of the Morning. Which, wasn't that also? Of course, yeah, the Sword of the Morning. Arthur Dane's stage name. And he remembers all these names, the names of the stars, the names of the constellations. He remembers that Ygritte explained that the free folk have different names for some of them. Like the King's Crown was the Cradle, to hear her tell it. The Stallion was the Horned Lord. There you go. The Red Wanderer that Sectons preached and was sacred to their smith up here in the north was called the Thief. And in fact, is when the thief was in Moon Maid, that was a propitious time for a man to steal a woman. Oh my God, are you thinking what I'm thinking? Yeah? Natal charts, horoscopes, yeah? That's what Ygritte is talking about here. Like Mercury in Libra is a good time to, be buying a car. I just made that up, but you know what I mean. It may well be a plausible astrological interpretation. Anyway, to further drive the point home, George R. R. Martin tells us that there are indeed 12 star signs. Here's the quote. Jon had learned the names of the 12 houses of heaven and the rulers of each. That's what George R. R. Martin is telling us. Their world is our world, if a bit, warped. The wildlings have different names for those celestial bodies, and so do we. You and I, dear listener, in what is commonly known and referred to as the real world. There. And with regards to that whole women stealing business, yeah, that's how it works among the wildlings. If you want to start a family, what better way to begin the enterprise than by abducting a woman and informing her that you are now a family unit? You might think this courting procedure a bit sexist, but bear in mind that this is the free folk we're talking about. Meaning that the same freedom is extended to women in this relationship. A woman is perfectly free to slay her partner / abductor if she's dissatisfied with him or with how he performs his his manly duties. So there. And no one will convict her, The tribe will just go, oh, well, she killed him. Yeah, well, I guess she had her good reasons, I suppose. So that's how it goes. Sorry. So Jon is walking up there, to the top of a hill, all the while entertaining sad thoughts because, hello, Jon. And his train of thoughts goes like, Ygritte is the most stubborn person I've ever met, except maybe for my sister Arya. Only difference being their catchphrase, because Ygritte says, you know nothing, to anyone she happens to disagree with, while my sister Arya just calls everybody stupid. But is Arya really my sister? You see, that's a classical train of thoughts, it goes in random random directions. Is Arya really my sister? After all, I'm only a bastard, blah, blah, blah. And anyway, I lost all my siblings when I joined the Night's Watch. And now that I'm also a turncloak, I lost the Night's Watch brothers too. Yeah, that's what he keeps thinking, you know. All these cheerful thoughts. At which point he catches up with Ghost and wonders if he also has his own direwolf names for the stars. You know, names that Ghost, being a predator, might all be named after praise. You know, the hare, the doe, the roast beef, the cheeseburger, and so on and so forth. But humor aside, this is actually a sad moment, because with Jon's limited warging powers, and until Ghost learns how to scale a 7-foot wall, Jon has to leave the direwolf behind, because there's no way he'll be able to take Ghost with him on the next leg of his journey. You know, free climbing is not for everyone, and certainly not for dire wolves. And the HBO TV series went on a different direction here, because you'll remember the series writers decided to have Jon and Ghost part ways far sooner, because Jon left him at Craster's Keep, meaning that in the TV series, Ghost wasn't even with Jon during the entire ranging with Corin Halfhand, or the whole Wildling experience. Ghost didn't get to experience any of that in the TV series. He was locked up at Craster's Keep, if I remember correctly. But here Jon says to Ghost, okay, yeah, all right, so this is a goodbye, yeah? And it's all very sad. Anyway, this separation is only temporary, because Jon's plan is to send Ghost ahead to Castle Black. I don't know, I guess a spot near the entrance to Castle Black, where the Black Crows on watch duty can spot him, like 700 feet above, or one of those ground level patrols, I suppose. And maybe open the gate for him. Yeah, that's basically the plan, as I understand it. And yes, most plans in this novel are a bit half-arsed. Also, but maybe Jon is being a bit too optimistic here, I should think. He hopes that the sight of Ghost will be a clear warning to the brothers, the Black Brothers of the Night's Watch, that the wildlings are coming. And in a flash, whoosh, Ghost is gone. Poof, like Kaiser Soze. Is he off to Castle Black? Is he just off to find a hare or a doe or a roast beef or a cheeseburger? Did he even understand a single word Jon just told him? Time will tell. Meanwhile, speaking of Castle Black, Jon has an unusual view of the wall and the various castles, manned and unmanned. Well, mostly unmanned. And I say unusual because the wall is to the south of his current position. You have to be either a wildling or a ranger to be able to enjoy a view of the north side of the wall. And Jon, well, he's a bit of both right now. In his own words, how do I play the turncloak without becoming one? Is he Donnie Darko? No, sorry, what am I? Donnie Brasco, you know, the undercover. Sorry, I don't know what's in my throat today. I'm feeling weird. Because he knows that the free folk are planning to scale the wall from an unmanned post somewhere between Stone Door and Greyguard, which gives you an idea of their current position, because that spot is a lot closer to Shadow Tower than Castle Black, just so you know. But anyway, the point is that Jon has no way to warn his brothers, or whatever is left of them, of this attack. So Jon is conflicted, and not for the last time in this chapter. Like, for example, he asks himself, would Corin have killed Mance, given half a chance, like the half chance I had just the other day? Or should I keep trying to break the system from within, and so on and so forth? And he thinks back on all the times while riding towards the wall that he thought he had a chance to steal a horse and ride to Castle Black, give the alarm and whatnot. But nothing, because the Thenns, you know, from way up north, the Thenns always had a tight watch around the horses. So before you knew it, there it is. The wall. They arrived. after so many days of march. Hey, now it's too late. The wall is right there, within sight, from the north side, of course. And tomorrow, Jon, he's expected to scale it like the others. So he's confused, even when he keeps telling himself, hey, I'm only playing a part like Corin Halfhand ordered me to do, playing the part of the infiltrator. Even when I infiltrated Ygritte the other night, if you know what I mean, which was a bit of all right, I must say. Yeah, at this point, we're treated to a whole erotic description of Jon's and Ygritte's intercourse. So after the food porn, the garment porn, we now have a bit of a porn, or sex position, as someone calls it. And although to be fair, the description that we're given here seems to be imbued, if that's the word, with some good old passion and, dare I say, love, as opposed to, say, any description of a sexual intercourse in, I don't know, a Theon Greyjoy POV chapter, whether on board of the trading cog the Miraham or in Winterfell or anywhere you might remember from Acock from A Clash of Kings. Of course, that doesn't mean this isn't yet another opportunity for Ygritte to remind Jon that the latter's knowledge is very poor indeed, or you know nothing, Jon Snow, to say it in her own words, which can be interpreted as, you don't know what you're doing, you bloody virgin. But that's all right, you're cute, so I'll show you, yeah? Although later on we will see that Jon does know a trick or two with which he surprises Ygritte. Meanwhile, whenever he's in bed with Ygritte, I use the term bed loosely here, he keeps thinking to himself, that's all right, it's not morally wrong to break my vows. I'm just obeying orders. All the things I wouldn't do for the Seven Kingdoms, Yeah, Jon, that's right. Keep saying that to yourself if it helps you explain why you're loving it so much. Personally, I can't blame you, dude. Who wouldn't love it? I mean, if Ygritte is half as attractive as the actress who plays her in the HBO series, Rose Leslie. Did you know she's some kind of aristocrat, by the way? Or whatever, old Scottish nobility of sorts. I don't quite know how that works. Her full name is Rose Eleanor Arbuthnot Leslie. Not exactly a wildling herself, And yes, I am using the term actress. Right now, at the time of recording this, IMDb uses that term. Even when female actors are concerned. So yeah, all right. Until IMDb switches to actor for female actresses, I'll stick to this. But yeah, so Leslie Rose, she does make TV viewers' hearts beat faster, doesn't she? Although something tells me that book Ygritte is not as attractive as TV series Ygritte, as I seem to remember Jon thinking, there is something about her, although really she would be considered unremarkable back in Winterfell. Make of that what you will, gentle listener. Maybe he was just repeating that stuff to himself to avoid falling for her like big time, man. Mission failed there, by the way. Anyway, I lost my train of thoughts. Not unlike Jon. Where was I? Oh, yeah. So Jon justifies this, shall we call it slipping, by telling himself, hey, I'm only following orders, and at the end of the day, I'm still my own father's son, Eddard Stark. Might remember him, who supposedly was such a stickler to the rules, but hey, he did slip, didn't he? I am the living proof. Which might not be the case, actually, although Jon has no way of knowing that. Of course, I did go through the semi-canon theory that Jon isn't Ned's illegitimate son at all. That's what I'm talking about. But I won't be spending any time on it here. It's technically not a spoiler because has it ever been confirmed by Mr. Martin? That I know not. But anyway, yeah, that's how the theory goes. So he keeps telling himself, "I'm a man of the Night's Watch. I'm better than that," and he keeps saying that mentally every time he slips with a grit over and over again. In fact, if you allow me to jump slightly ahead in this chapter, later on we'll find out that Jon, and I quote, had been in her 100 times by now. I quote this for no other reason than to help us place this chapter on a timeline as accurately as we can. Okay, so let's put our thinking caps on, you and I, dear listener. Shall we conservatively estimate 1 or 2 intercourses a day? You see, I'm being very scientific about it right now. 1 or 2 intercourses a day. If it's 1, then roughly 50 days have elapsed between the previous Jon POV chapter and this one. If it's twice a day that they made love, that's how I prefer to call it, by the way. If it was twice a day, then it's been 25 days. Then again, this is 2 teenagers we're talking about, so it's not beyond the realm of possibility that on some days Jon might have been, to use his own words, in her 3 times. So shall we say 2.5 times a day? Huh? Oh, sounds great. Right, so 20 days then, yeah? We've got 20 days. Yeah, I do realize how ridiculous it is to estimate the passage of time by the amount of acts of love. Oh, by the way, how do we know they're both teenagers? Haha, I hear you ask. Well, we do know that Jon is roughly 16 in this chapter, possibly going on 17. And we also learned in the previous Jon POV chapter that Ygritte claimed, this is another quote, claimed to be 3 years older than him, though she stood half a foot shorter, which would make her 19 going on 20. And later on she will actually say it, just to save us time. I'm 19 and a spare wife. Be it as it may, this would play this chapter way after anything we have any other any other chapter that we have read so far. Because in fact that document, because I know all that because of that document I keep quoting, even though I constantly get the author's name wrong. That document you can download online, and it gives us more precise info. All right, okay, let's just one step back. First of all, the document that I'm telling you about is called the Most Precise ASOIAF Timeline in Existence. It's an Excel spreadsheet you can find and download online, and Google Documents. There's a website dedicated to it. And okay, credit where credit is due. I don't know why I kept crediting Alan Feldman, aka Feldman10 on Reddit, even though Alan, the author of some great essays on the Milanese blot, is almost certainly one of the authors, because I think this timeline is the fruit of the labor of lots of people. However, if you look at the document currently hosted on Google Documents, it was originally posted on Reddit by a user called Private Major. So that's all I know. If you, dear listener, have further info, I would welcome it. Anyway, the point is that this timeline, this famed document, places Jon III, the chapter we're currently reading, after Arya 8, Jaime 5, and Daenerys 6. All chapters we haven't even started yet. It's kind of tricky to place characters on a timeline continuum. Characters whose POV chapters take place outside the Seven Kingdoms with little info on what's going on in the rest of the world. Poor reception, no access to social media. What are you going to do? Case in point, Daenerys and Jon right now. But if you embrace the timeline explained in this online document, then be aware that we're taking a glimpse, by reading this chapter, we're taking a glimpse into the future. When we tackle, say, for example, Area 8, which is 17 chapters ahead, or Jaime, 11 chapters ahead in the future, or indeed Daenerys 6, which is 45 chapters ahead, bear in mind that all this stuff we're reading right now from this Jon III chapter has yet to happen. Does that clarify the time issue a bit? Because I don't know about you. I don't know if you, dear listener, are planning to stick with me for as long as that. How long it'll take us to get to those chapters I just listed. But it would certainly make my day if you did. There, I said it. And as I said, the criterion used by these authors, or the authors of this most precise timeline I just quoted, is indeed how many intercourses there have been between Jon and Ygritte so far. There. So you see, I'm not the only one. Oh, and the scaling of the wall, which is tomorrow, from this chapter's POV, and the next Jon chapter. Anyway, right now, Jon snaps out of his thoughts, because a Thenn is calling him. He goes, "Oi, dude, I'm talking to you. Oi, the Magnar wants to speak with you." The Magnar, who decided to assume this title, which also happens to be the brand of an Irish cider. The Thenns, being a huge tribe dwelling way north in uncharted territory. No, but really, and the Magnar means leader in their language. These Thenns were poorly represented in the HBO TV series. Kind of like the ultimate savage, brutal beasts, cannibals, total monsters and whatnot. But in the book, they're described as a society with some kind of a code of honor, unlike the other wildlings. And in fact, they're the only group within Mance Rayder's armies with some kind of military discipline, which, by the way, is why Mance has selected the Thenns for this particular operation. To be sure, there were cannibals within Mance's rank and file, but they're just barely mentioned in the book. And what the TV series did, as it often does, is it merged two characters, or groups of characters in this case, the Thenns and these unnamed, cannibals. So anyway, the Magnar of the Thenns summons Jon because he has questions for him. This place where they're currently camped is filled with caverns, caves, and the Magnar has set up shop in one of them. Small entrance from the outside, but as large as Winterfell's Great Hall on the inside. So Jarl and the Magnar are there waiting for Jon. They're both in charge of this operation. Now, just to quickly remind ourselves of who's who, the Magnar's name is Stur, and this Jarl, I'm going to pronounce it Jarl, not Jarl, even though it's spelled with a J, because, Viking name, Jarl. Ask any Dane. The Danes will tell you. So Viking name, yeah. So Jarl is Val's boyfriend, or pet, as everyone is calling him. Val means Mance Rayder's wife, Dalla's sister. Okay, so Mance Rayder has a wife. The wife's name is Dalla. She's pregnant right now, as far as I remember. She hasn't given birth yet. And Dalla's sister is named Val. She's supposed to be this smoking hot blonde gal, apparently. Both Dalla and Val didn't make it to the HBO series. Another case of character culling. Aren't we getting sick of all that? Never mind. And Stur is none too pleased at having to share command with this young upstart Jarl. But hey, what are you going to do? So Stur, or Steer, is it Steer? Stur. Well, I'm guessing Stur. Wants to know everything about patrols on top of the wall, the Black Crows, the Black Brothers on the Night's Watch, how often they set out from Castle Black and Shadow Tower, and vice versa. and how many Black Crows are currently manning the 3 castles that are not abandoned, etc., etc. Notice that he says, tell me that stuff, just to stress the point that he is ultimately in charge, not both him and Jarl, Jon being a keen social linguist, he picks on that. So Jon gives him either very little to work with, like Lord Commander Mormont prefers to vary the number of patrols on the days of their departure and the days of their departure to make it more difficult for anyone to know their coming and goings there. And sometimes the old bear will even send a larger force to one of the abandoned castles for a fortnight or a moon's turn. Yeah. How do you like that? He either does that or he gives him a grossly exaggerated figure of how many Night's Watchmen remain at the wall. Because really, even Castle Black is actually closer to being a ghost town ever since the Ranging up north left their post. Really, not the brightest of ideas, Lord Commander Mormont, if I may be so bold. Besides, Jarl, who is not too stupid, figures out that Jon has probably included the number of comrades that died on the fist of the first men. Says, come on, that's way too many. Are you counting the dead Black Crows as well? And this is where we learn that Styr is planning to scale the wall between Stone Door and Greyguard because of a hill that's sort of buttressing the wall, making the ascent a bit shorter, from what I understand. Also in this chapter, I noticed the theme of being trapped recurs 3 times, dear listener. Twice physically and once figuratively. The first time is here, when Jon says, yeah, we also have patrols at the base of the wall to search for cracks in the foundation ice or signs of tunneling. To which Styr goes, yeah, all right, we won't be digging any tunnels, mate. And because he recalls the story of a certain wildling, unfortunately, poorly named Arson Isaacs, who did try to dig his way to the other side of the wall, but the tunnel was found by rangers from the Night Fort, who sealed the way behind him with ice and stone and snow. And he was never found. So that, and by the way, if even Styr knows this story, well, it can only have been spread by men of the Night's Watch, if you think about it. Come on. Because if either wildlings had been around at the time, they would have waited for the opportune moment to dig the guy back out. Think about it, no? Anyway, so Jon is dismissed, and as he leaves, muttering to himself that if free folks were all as rude and uncouth as Styr, it would come so much easier to betray them. We can assume, because he's sort of feeling guilty at betraying Mansraider, not to mention, ultimately, Ygritte. Speaking of whom, when Jon gets back to where he was before, Ygritte is gone. Some dude called Grig the Goat just tells him, yeah, you're looking for Ygritte? Yeah, she went that way. So he follows deep into the cave, gets lost a few times, no sexual imagery to see here, move along, until there she is. And this is a scene that became super famous in the TV series. Here's the quote from the text. Ygritte stood beside a little waterfall that fell from a cleft in the rock down into a wide, dark pool. This is verbatim from the text. And the pool they used as location for the TV series is an actual hot water pool in Iceland, in a cave called Griotagia. I almost certainly butchered that name. Sorry, Icelandic listeners. And if you're a fan of the series, this is a must-see destination, apparently. So Jon finally finds her right there by the pool, and he's all like, what are you doing there? Isn't that tunnel a dead end or whatever? And she, to be fair, yeah, well, she does remind Jon that really he knows nothing. which is becoming rather annoying at this point. But they discuss history, as you do when in a cave, because apparently this is the very same cave where some 3,000 years ago, two kings beyond the wall, Gorn and his brother Gendel, led an army of wildlings to an assault. Except the Night's Watch were all there at the cave exit, waiting for them, so there was a battle. And wouldn't you know it, Jon and Ygritte disagree on some fine points of a 3,000-year-old story, which they both learn on two separate sides of the wall that have been at war for millennia. Gee, who would have thought? Yeah, the point of contention being, was Gandalf slain by the Black Crows, or did he simply get lost deep in the cave and can still be heard desperately trying to find his way out? Ygritte's version of the story, dear listener, being the second instance of this theme of being trapped somewhere physically. So that's two already. Later on, we'll encounter the theme of being trapped figuratively, theme number 3. But anyway, I wouldn't recommend getting lost in that particular cave. Because, be careful. Be careful, guys. I'm talking to you, Ygritte and Jon. So anyway, they have a bit of an argument regarding those fine historical points, which of course ends in tender sex, because why not? And Jon, are you ready for it? Introduces Cunnilingus in the Beyond the Wall region. Ha! Yes, he will be forever credited for that. In the lands of eternal winter. Which, as I anticipated later, surprises the hell out of Ygritte, because apparently she didn't know it was even a thing. Told you. There does happen to be a thing or two that Jon does know. So there. Now, question is, who did Jon learn it from? Because he claims no one taught him. She goes, yeah, I'm impressed with that thing you did. So is that like a southern thing? A lord/lady thing that you have back where you come from? Or what? And he's all like, no, I just ad-libbed, I went with the flow and all. Now, if we choose to believe him, fine. Then again, if he did learn it from someone, who could it have been? Come on, let's start a survey. Let's start a poll. I think we can rule out Catelyn, because even giving Jon the bees and flowers talk, because yes, that is a mother's job, isn't it? Father's job, mother's job, whatever. We can imagine Catelyn that Catelyn would have thought that is a mother's job, and I'm thinking with a mother's brains, and I, after all, have mother's duties, and it's all about mothers with Catelyn. But Jon is no son of mine. Ha. So F you, Jon. You're on your own on this one. So it wasn't Catelyn who told him, look, there's this thing you can do to women and they'll be grateful for it if you play your cards right. So maybe Ned. Could Ned have told... Can you imagine that? Okay, maybe right at the beginning of book 1, right after chopping a guy's head off, he thought to himself, yes, now that they have witnessed an execution, my older kids are now ready for this other Stark trick. Gather round, Rob, Jon. No, not you, Bran, not you. Not yet. Okay, so listen up, yeah? Politics and all that, all very well and good, but listen to a secret that the Starks have been passing down from father to son for generations. What do you think? Could that have happened? Or maybe Maester Luwin. Okay, picture this. Same scenario, Maester Luwin clapping his hands. All right, gather round, the dear boys. Rob, Jon, come over here. Now that I have taught you the rudiments of astronomy, names of the major celestial houses and the stars that rule them, I suppose you're ready for this other lesson. See, see this silver link here in my chain? Clink, clink, clink. See it? Signifying mastery of medicine and functions of the body, among other things, anatomy and whatnot. Now, this lesson coming up will be of an altogether different nature. Very well. Now, where is that book penned by that horny maester? I'm afraid I'll need it, dear boys, as memory definitely does not serve on this particular matter. It's been too long, you see, dear boys. Yeah, does that also sound plausible, Maester Lewin, teaching cunnilingus to both John and Rob? We don't know because we didn't have what's her name, Jane's Rob's wife. We didn't have Jane's version of narration of how Rob performs because our only eyes on Jane are Kathleen's eyes, so she wouldn't exactly tell all that stuff to her mother-in-law. She's been already forward enough as it is. All right. How long have I been spending on cunnilingus, on this particular part of the chapter and on the subject of oral sex in general? But allow me, dear listener, to spend just a few more words on something else that puzzles me. Because as you might know, certain books in the saga of Ice and Fire are banned in a number of Arab countries, and I imagine Asian countries as well. Not all of them, mind you. This one I'm now reading from is, rest assured of that. Reason, you ask? Why? Certainly not the violence, blood and gore. Who cares about that? No, but for the raunchy, naughty bits, And the reason for my puzzlement is that the one book you can actually purchase at a bookstore in all Arab Gulf countries, Oman, United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait. Am I missing some? No? Saudi Arabia. I'm not sure about Saudi. But the one book you can purchase in those countries is, are you ready? A Clash of Kings. Bantam editions, only one available there, to be precise. Which is, so far in the saga, I don't know if you remember this, it's the only book, bar this very chapter from A Storm of Swords, where a reader can read a full, explicit and graphic description of oral sex. The scene I mentioned earlier in Theon 1 from Book 2, The Clash of Kings. So why is that book available and not the other books in the series? Why? Don't know. If you, dear listener, have any insights, you're more than welcome to post them in the comments. Anyway, back to Jon and Ygritte, who get busy throughout the night, while Jon is beginning to care less and less about his night's watch vows. With each thrust, he's killing off his resolve with his thrusts. And in fact, he's starting to think, if this is so wrong, why did the gods make it feel so good? Well, you tell me, Jon Snow. I often have that same feeling about chocolate cake. Yeah. Anyway, so a bit of pillow talk, as you have, in soap operas, past boyfriends, etc., etc., etc. And what about you, Jon? No one in your life before me? Nah, you really are a virgin. Oh my God. And so on and so forth. Then they say something interesting. Somehow, the conversation moves to Craster. Because how could it not? In such a romantic setting, And the fact that he had daughters from his own daughters. Yuck. And Ygritte reminds Jon that really, just because Craster happens to live north of the wall, doesn't make him one of the free folk. First of all, this whole incest business is repugnant to the wildlings. A true man steals a woman from afar. It strengthens the clan. Women who bed brothers or fathers or clan kin offend the gods and are cursed with weak and sickly children, even monsters, is what Ygritte says. So interesting contrast, yeah, between the ways of the free folk and, say, those decadent Targaryens, for example. Not to mention the equally decadent Jaime and Cersei. In fact, now that I think about it, I'm reminded of the contrast between healthy and honest barbarians versus corrupt and decadent members of civilization. You know, in Robert E. Howard, civilization was invariably evil and corrupt in Robert E. Howard. Indeed, some free folk tribes could stand in for the Cimmerians, you know, Conan the Barbarians, the Barbarian being one of them. Yeah, the more I think about it, you know, the Thenns could be the Cimmerians, you know. Anyway, so Ygritte says this about Craster. You know what? Craster's more of your kind than ours. His father was a crow who stole a woman out of White Tree Village. But after he had her, he flew back to his wall. She went to Castle Black once. This wife, this woman, she went to Castle Black to show the crow his son. But the brothers blew their horns twice, presumably, as we learned from the prologue, and then they ran her off. Craster's blood is black, and he bears a heavy curse. So yeah, that's an interesting origin story for the character Craster. How would you fancy reading a spin-off book on Craster, huh? The Craster, the beginnings. No? You wouldn't? Yeah, nah, me neither. So yeah, Jon and Ygritte embrace again, and more thrusts, less and less care for Jon's vows. But also Ygritte's care for her own loyalty sort of vanishes, because she says something heartbreaking at the end of the chapter. Let's not go back, Jon. Let's not go back to Styr and Jarl. Let's go down inside and join up with Gendal's children. I don't ever want to leave this cave, Jon. Not ever. Ha! Oh my God. Not a dry tear in the reading community. I know I'm right. Don't lie to me, dear listener. Because it says it all, doesn't it? They can't go south, not on their own. And besides, we have literally just been told what happens to wildling women stolen by the Night's Watch men. The Black Crows are taken back into the fold and possibly reprimanded, but the women are chased away or possibly killed. I mean, that info is all spelled out for us, just one paragraph above. Definitely not placed there at random. So they can't go south. And they can't go north either, because they would be intercepted by the Thenns, Jarl and the Thenns, Styr. You know, oi, just where do you think you're going? So yeah, there's nowhere for these two lovers to go. Trapped is what they are. And this, dear listener, is the third instance of the theme of being trapped somewhere, this time figuratively. So that's 3 times. A very, easy to spot leitmotif, I should say. So yeah, Ygritte might as well fantasize about going deeper down inside the cave and join up with Gendal's children, the legendary king beyond the wall, and never leave the cave where both Jon and Ygritte decided that the only thing they cared about was each other. Now you tell me, dear listener, you don't have a lump in your throat, huh? And with this lump in both our throats, gentle listener, we conclude the reading of Jon 3 from A Storm of Swords. Oh, look, we made it under 50 minutes. Well, thank you for following me this far. I look forward to going through other chapters with you. Feel free to navigate, previous Jon chapter, next Storm of Swords chapter, previous Storm. So feel free to go any way you like, or nowhere at all. Total freedom. And if you enjoyed this kind of content, don't forget to do the things that people do under such circumstances. And that's all from me, rather. I always get I need to get my prepositions right. And that is indeed all from me, dear listener. I look forward to speaking to you again. Ciao.